Okay, so now that I've opened up the very front cover of my book, something I love about mysteries, and you guys already know that I'm a big map nerd. But one thing I really like about mysteries is that a lot of times they give us a map. And the reason why I think they give us the map is because it might help us solve the mystery along the way and figure out where the main characters are going and maybe where some of the clues might lead them to. So there's a lot to take in here. You can pause the video and take a look, or maybe scroll through the PDF version of this book and maybe take a look or follow along, as sometimes we talk about where they will go. A main portion of our story happens around this little corner down here called the Shangri-La Hotel, and you're going to see a little Shangri-La Hotel key, down at the very bottom as we go. And then here is the main street, and then we have the Indian River going around town called Green Lawn. Okay, so this is where all of our A to Z mystery characters live. And then we have our compass rose, which most maps have. Okay, so we're going to begin reading A to Z Mysteries, The Absent Author. Chapter 1. Please, Josh, Dink said. If you come with me today, I'll owe you one. Just name it. Anything. Dink's full name was Donald David Duncan, but nobody in Greenlawn ever called him that, except his mother, when she meant business. Josh Pinto grinned at his best friend. Anything! Anything? He raised his mischievous green eyes toward the ceiling of Dink's bedroom. Let's see, what do you have that I want? He scratched his head. I know, I'll take Loretta. Dink tossed a pillow at Josh. When I said anything, I meant anything but my guinea pig. Are you coming with me or not? I have to be at the book nook in 15 minutes. Dink rushed into the bathroom, tucking his shirt into his jeans at the same time. Josh followed him. Standing in front of the mirror, Dink yanked a brush through his thick blonde hair. Well, he asked, are you coming with me? What's so important about this writer guy? Josh asked, sitting on the edge of the bathtub. Dink turned around and pointed at his hairbrush. Wallace isn't just some writer guy, Josh. He's the most famous mystery writer in the world. Well, then I take a look up here. There's that Shangri-La key picture at the top of the page. If he's so famous, why is he coming to dinky little Greenlawn? I'm going to stop right there and think to myself, this is where I put a Post-it note. Okay, Greenlawn is where they live, and then this author is coming. So we read the back of the book, so maybe now we know a little bit more about what's going on. Dink charged back to his bedroom. I told you he's coming because I invited him. I'm scared to death to meet somebody so famous. I don't even know what you're supposed to say to an author. Dink dived under his bed and backed out again with his sneakers. Please come with me. Josh leaned in the bedroom doorway. Sure, I'll come, you dope. I'm just trying to make you sweat. Usually you're so calm. Dink stared at his friend. You will? Thanks. I can't believe Wallace was really coming. When I wrote and asked him, I never thought he'd say yes. Dink yanked his backpack out of the closet. Pack my books, okay? I'm getting Wallace to sign them all. Josh began pulling Wallace books off Dink's bookshelf. Geez, how many of these do you have? Everyone he's written, Dink said on the floor to tie his sneakers. 23 so far. You should read some of them, Josh. Josh picked out The Poisoned Pond and read the back cover. Hey, cool. It says here that Wallace lives in a castle in Maine. Wouldn't that be neat? Dink grinned. When I'm a famous writer, you can live in my castle, Josh. No way. When I'm a famous artist, you can live in my castle down in the basement. Josh picked up the riddle in the river. What's this guy look like, he asked, and how's come his pictures on any of these books? You know, I wondered about that too, Dink said. I sent him my school pictures and asked for one of him, but when I got his letter, there was no picture. He finished tying his laces. Maybe Wallace just doesn't like having his picture taken. Josh squeezed all 23 books into Dink's backpack. He grinned at Dink. Or maybe he's just too ugly. Dink laughed. Geez, Josh, you're ugly and you love have your picture taken. Ha ha. Josh picked up his drawing pad. But just because you're my best friend, I'll draw his picture at the bookstore. Dink looked at his watch. Yikes, he said. We have to pick up Ruth Rose in 1 minute. You know what? I'm going to stop right here. I'd like to put a Post-it note down here. And I want to put a Post-it note saying something like, these two have a really funny relationship with each other. You know, they like to kind of pick at each other and tell jokes. They're a little sarcastic. So I can kind of tell they're already really good friends. We have to pick up Ruth Rose in 1 minute. He tore into the bathroom and started brushing his teeth. How'd you get her to come? How'd you get her to come? Josh called. Dink rushed back into his room, wiping his toothpaste from his mouth. You kidding? Ruth Rose loves Wallace Wallace books. Dink slung his backpack over his shoulder, and he and Josh hurried to next door to 24 Woody Street. Tiger, Ruth Rose's orange cat, was sitting in the sun on the steps. Dink pressed the doorbell, and down here you can see the cat down here at the bottom. Dink pressed the doorbell. Ruth Rose showed up at the door, and as usual, she was dressed all in one color. Today, it was purple. She wore purple cover overalls, a purple shirt, and had purple running shoes with a purple baseball cap, and her black curls out of her face. A cap kept her black curls out of her face. Hey, she said, and then she turned around and screamed into the house. The guys are here, Mom, I'm leaving. Dink and Josh covered their ears. Geez, Ruth Rose, Josh said. I didn't know what's louder, your outfit or your voice. There you go again. Josh is kind of he has a sarcastic little bit about it. I would put a Post-it note right there. Ruth Rose smiled sweetly at Josh. I can't wait until Wallace Wallace signs my book, she said. She held up a copy of The Phantom in the Pharmacy. I wonder if Wallace Wallace will read from the new book that he's working on, Dink said. What's the title? Ruth Rose asked. They headed toward the book nook. I don't know, said Dink, but he wrote in his letter that he was doing some research while he's here in Connecticut. Oh, wait. Now I know what state that they live in. There you go. Dink pulled the letter out of his pocket and read it out loud while they walked. So here's the letter. So if we're thinking in terms of a mystery, usually mysteries always have some sort of drawing or some evidence or a clue that might lead us to any kind of mystery. So we know that this author is going to be absent or not around. So this is a clue that might help us solve that. And the characters don't know that he's gone yet, but we do, because we read the back cover. Dear Duncan, thank you for your kind letter. I'm so impressed that you've read all my books. I have good news. I've made some arrangements to come to the book nook. To come to the book nook to sign books. I can use part of my time for research. Thanks for your picture, and I'm so happy to finally meet one of my most loyal fans. Short of being kidnapped, nothing will stop me from coming. See you soon. Wallace Wallace. The letter was signed Wallace Wallace in loopy letters. Dink grinned. Pretty neat, huh? And I just put a question mark here, loopy letters, and I'm like, what do they mean? I think they're talking about this right here. Pretty neat, Mr. Duncan, teased Josh. He says, Mr. Duncan. You should have that letter framed, Ruth Rose said. Great idea, Dink said. They passed Howard's barbershop. Howard waved through his window and as they hurried by. Come on, Dink urged as he dragged his friends down the street to the book nook. They looked through the window out of breath. The bookstore was crowded with kids. The book nook's owner, Mr. Paskey, had set up folding chairs, and Dink didn't notice that most of them were already taken. Dink noticed that most of them were already taken. Dink and Mr. Paskey, sitting behind a table, a big white sign on the table said, Welcome, Wallace Wallace. But the chair behind the sign was empty. Dink gulped and stared at the empty seat. Where's Wallace Wallace? We're going to talk about chapter 2 here in a second, but that one little tiny thing kind of got my brain going. He says, short of being kidnapped, nothing will stop me from coming. I wonder if that's why the author is gone, because The author already knows that he's kidnapped or is going to be kidnapped. Something doesn't seem right with that letter, the way he said that. Chapter 2. Dink raced into the book nook. Josh and Ruth Rose were right behind him. They found 3 seats behind Tommy Tomko and Eddie Carini. Dink plopped his pack on the floor, and the clock over the cash register said 3 minutes after 11. "Where is he?" Dink whispered to Tommy Tomko. Tommy turned around. "Beats me. He's not here yet. Mr. Paskey looks worried." "What's going on?" Ruth Rose said. Dink told her and Josh what Tommy had said. "Paskey does look pretty nervous," Josh whispered. "Mr. Paskey always looks nervous," Dink whispered back, looking around the room. He saw about 30 kids he knew. Mr. Davis, Dink's neighbor, was looking at gardening books. Dink checked out the other grown-ups in the store. None of them looked like any famous mystery writer. Mr. Paskey stood up. "Boys and girls, welcome to the book nook. Wallace should be here any second. How many of you have books to be autographed?" Everyone waved a book in the air. "Wonderful. I'm sure Wallace will be happy to know that Green Lawn is a reading town." The kids clapped and cheered. Oh, there's that key again. Dink glanced at the clock. 11:05. He swallowed, trying to stay calm. Wallace is late, but it's only 5 minutes. Slowly, 5 more minutes passed. Dink felt his palms getting damp. Where is Wallace? He wondered. Some of the kids started getting restless. Dink heard one kid say, "Whenever I'm late, I get grounded." "So where is he?" Josh asked. Ruth Rose looked at her watch. It's only 10 after, she said. Famous people are always late. Now, Dink stared at the clock. The big hand jerked forward, paused, and then wobbled forward again. I kind of know, like, sometimes if you stare at a clock, sometimes that happens. At 11:15, Mr. Paskey stood up again. "I don't understand why Wallace is late," he said. Dink noticed that his bald head was shiny with sweat. His bow tie was getting a workout. His bow tie was getting a workout. How can you give a bow tie a workout? Oh, I think what he means here is that he keeps on pulling at his bow tie as if he's nervous. So his bow tie was getting a workout. That's a figurative language versus literal language we've been talking about. Mr. Paskey smiled bravely, but his eyes were blinking like crazy through his thick glasses. "Shall we give him a few more minutes?" The crowd grumbled, but nobody wanted to go anywhere. Ruth Rose started to read her book. Josh opened his sketch pad and began drawing Mr. Paskey. Dink turned and stared at the door. He mentally ordered Wallace to walk to the door. "You have to come," Dink thought. So here we go. Here's some angry kids here. Somebody reading a book in the background. Here's Mr. Paskey looking worried. Oh, and the clock in the background. It's 11:15. Ever since he had received Wallace's letter, he thought about only one thing: meeting him today. Suddenly, Dink felt his heart skip a beat. The letter! "Short of being kidnapped?" the letter said. Oh, I knew it. I knew that was going to come. "Nothing will stop me from coming." Kidnapped? Dink shook himself. Of course Wallace hadn't been kidnapped. Mr. Paskey stood again, but this time he wasn't smiling. "Sorry, kids," he said, "but Wallace doesn't seem to be coming after all." The kids all groaned. They got up, scraping their chairs and bumping their knees. Mr. Paskey apologized to them as they crowded past, heading for the door. "I've read every single one of his books," Dink heard Amy Flower tell another girl. "Now I'll probably never meet anyone famous." "I can't believe we gave up a soccer game for this," Tommy Tomko muttered to Eddie Carini on the way out. Ruth Rose and Josh went next, but Dink remained in his seat. He was too stunned to move. He felt the letter through his jeans. Short of being kidnapped. Finally, Dink got up and walked out. Josh and Ruth Rose were waiting for him. "What's the matter?" Ruth Rose said. "You look sick." "I am sick," Dink mumbled. "I invited him here, and it's my fault." "What's your fault?" Josh asked. "This." he said, thrusting the letter to Josh's hands. Thrusting must mean like pushing or shoving it. Wallace has been kidnapped. All right, so this would be a good time to maybe make some predictions. You could put your predictions in the comment section if you'd like to. On who you think, what you think has happened to Wallace. Do you think he's been kidnapped? If so, by who? Maybe you have a different theory or a different idea. Or are there any clues to back up your proof as evidence? So hopefully you enjoyed chapters 1 and 2. We'll do chapters 3, I think, and 4 coming up here in a day or two. All right, guys, have fun.